When I started working in the business and seeking a career as a producer, my father was supportive, but he always acted as if he had nothing to teach me, because what did he know? Let me call so-and-so. You should talk to them. They know a lot about movies. He always sort of acted as if, well, what am I? I'm the actor. What do I know? I don't know anything.
I can understand you getting a crap game and losing $700 you didn't have, but how did you lose your pants?
In a lady's bedroom, trying to raise the cash. Almost had it made, too.
When he made The Professionals, he would have been pretty much at the waning end of the height of his career. I mean, he certainly was very much in demand. He was now becoming recognized as an actor. For the first half of my father's career, he was a guy who did his own stunts. He was a B-movie star, sometimes in A movies, but really a hunky guy. And until From Here to Eternity, probably never recognized for his acting, regardless of how hard he might try to go in that direction.
What's the proposition? You won't lose your pants. Your life, maybe, but what's that?
So by the end of the 1950s, he was probably the most powerful star producer in Hollywood. He liquidated his company and then started just before The Professionals, leading up that half-decade, to make really heavy-hitting pictures like Elmer Gantry, Judgment at Nuremberg, The Leopard, Birdman of Alcatraz. And after The Professionals, he makes The Swimmer. So in The Professionals, it's almost like he's saying goodbye, in a way, to the kind of witty, funny, over-the-top kind of character he played in so many of his 50s roles, like Vera Cruz. And in a way, The Professionals was a return to the shoot-'em-up entertainment style films that he made earlier in his career, that were his bread and butter when he was getting started. I think it was the kind of movie that made him go to the movies when he was a kid.
That makes 10. That's right.
The story is, according to Brooks, is he watched Lancaster in Brute Force, which is very early in Lancaster's career. He hadn't really learned to act yet. He was just a brute force. Brooks said to him, "You should read Elmer Gantry," Sinclair Lewis's novel Elmer Gantry from the late 1920s, "because someday we're going to make a picture of it." And as Brooks said, he and Lancaster built that script brick by brick like a wall, and worked very closely and passionately on that movie, which is a great, great movie and a fantastic script. And of course, Lancaster won his Oscar for Elmer Gantry.
I grew up knowing who Richard Brooks was, seeing him way back since Brute Force. They had been working together. And he was very demanding, very precise, very professional. And he and my father, I think, got along very well. I think my father had a great deal of respect for him, partly because he was a writer as well as a director. I think my father liked writers. I think he respected writers and felt it was something that he didn't do, but he admired. My dad was a great reader, and Richard Brooks was a very bright man who wrote some great screenplays as well as directing some great movies.
You're going to have to get over this nasty habit of always losing your pants. It's not dignified.
It's drafty, too.
The movie was seen by Brooks and Lancaster as a metaphor for the way they did business.
My word to Grant ain't worth a plug nickel.
You gave your word to me.
The Professionals, the title is perfect. And at this point, they were each seasoned professionals in the movie business. So this story, which is almost as ritualized and formalized as a kind of a classic drama, whether it's Greek or Japanese, it has a kind of a formality to it in the lines and in the structure of it.
$100,000 for a wife. She must be a lot of woman.
Certain women have a way of changing some boys into men, and some men back into boys.
That's a woman worth saving.
It is a metaphor for many things, but Brooks saw it as being the guys who can do their job.
We've got to make him think that we're the Mexican army.
The four of us.
A whole battalion.
He was very involved with films for so long when he had his own company. And I think that when he was functioning as a producer, he was involved in every step of the film. And he was fascinated and very respectful of all the technical artists on a film. He loved working with set designers. He had great respect for cameramen. He liked for a director to suggest a path to him rather than tell him how to do it. father was very comfortable in the physical world. I mean, I remember this from childhood. He would walk into a room on his hands. He taught us all to tumble because all kids should know how to tumble. He was very comfortable with physical space. I think that when you look on camera, you see that he moves very well because he just really understands his relationship to the world around him. And he always did do his stunts. I think he took great pride in it because he had grown up being an athlete. That's what he was before he was an actor. That's how he made his living for years, being an acrobat.
And in The Professionals, Brooks cited this 15, 20-foot cliff he scales with the rope. He did that himself. That was part of his persona. It was a certain authenticity and a certain integrity. So the audience knew that what they were seeing on the screen, they were actually getting. It wasn't faked, and that was very important to him.
When my father was in the circus, I think he learned not to trust animals the way he would people in a stunt or in a trick.
You better take my horse. You'll need him if Rosa gets past me.
But as long as it relied on him, as long as he could count on his physical prowess to get him through the stunt, I think he felt completely secure that he could do it. He knew what he could do and what he couldn't do, and he knew that he could do a lot. So he would always do it himself.
Because he would do his own stunts, of course, it meant that some stuntman was not doing the stunts for him. In order that he didn't feel as if he was taking the money away from, or a job away from someone, the money that would have gone to a stunt person to do his stunts, Lancaster donated to the home for older actors and stuntmen in Hollywood.
My dad loved to eat. He loved to indulge himself. I remember, he just loved ice cream. He loved pasta. But he was very, very disciplined. He would go through months of eating nothing but tuna fish and sliced tomatoes for lunch. He always exercised. He jogged just about daily probably till he was about 70. And then he stopped because he'd had a heart attack and had bypass surgery. And then he would walk. He was very, very strong. He had in his office, he had a rope always, which he would just climb to the top of and shimmy down. I remember this very vividly. I was on a plane with him, and he gave me this John Cheever story to read, and he said, read this and tell me what you think, that he wanted me to read. And I must have been about 14 years old. And he wanted to know what I thought of the story. And that was that was the story that Swimmer was based on. My dad didn't like to swim, and he had grown up in New York City, and he knew how to swim, but he was not a good swimmer, and he was very good at all the other athletic endeavors that he took to. So he hired the coach at UCLA to teach him to swim, and he swam, and he swam, and he swam. And then he made us get in the pool every day after school and swim 40 or 50 laps with the coach, because if he was suffering, we were going to suffer. And we all became this fabulous family of fabulous swimmers. It's the one thing I could do and look like I'm an athlete. And he, swam beautifully, got that stroke down for that movie. And I don't think he ever got in a swimming pool after that movie was over, because he really didn't like to swim. He really liked running better. My dad was one of those people who knew how to be still. And that's one of the reasons why the camera loves him. And I think it comes from being an athlete to some degree, that he learned a great economy of motion. And the trick is to do the feat in the smallest possible amount of space. And I think that even though he could be very broad in his performances, he could be still, and there was a lot of movement and magnetism to his stillness. I guess that's what it means maybe when the camera loves you, that you never are still when you are completely still.
So why should they circle?
Ross's men?
He had such amazing powers of concentration and focus that I think that also helped draw the camera to him and just made him a better actor when a soliloquy was required or when the camera had to stay on you for that length of time. It's a great accomplishment to be able to not move the camera.
It's beautiful. The next thing I know, I was across the border shooting along with everybody else and yelling, Viva Mexico.
because he was an action hero, he had the big smile,
That's right.
that he was handsome. I think that a lot of people assumed that he wasn't as intelligent or sensitive as he was. I mean, he was a man who did have a big personality and sometimes a big temper. And he had such a big voice and a big presence that when he walked into the room, he really was very like that character in Elmer Gantry when he was fired up about something. That wasn't a big stretch for him to play that. That's how he seemed at family dinners sometimes when he was on his, soapbox about something. But he loved hanging out with his friends, playing cards, playing golf. He loved reading. He did the crossword puzzle every morning. At the same time, he was somebody who really did like solitude a lot. And he was a big movie fan, but he was so critical of movies. Well, for one thing, I don't think he necessarily wanted to go to a premiere or anything like that. And my dad was a very funny man, and he really did enjoy a great laugh. And his friends were often writers and character actors and people who he could have a good laugh with. I think that he thought the whole movie star image was pretty preposterous on one level. I think he enjoyed it as anybody would when it was enjoyable. But he was one who did his own walked to the grocery store and did his own marketing, and just didn't feel that he wanted to be imprisoned by that image. And he was just a very funny man. He was very witty. He was he just do anything for a good time and for a laugh, I think, really.